I'm Madison Bailey, 28 years old, and I never imagined I would discover my parents tearing through my home when I came back earlier than planned for my work trip. The lovely house I had worked tirelessly for was in complete chaos, with cardboard boxes piled up in the foyer and my mother carefully wrapping my kitchen dishware in old newspapers. My father was busy unplugging my TV set. When I questioned what was going on, they grinned and announced, "We're assisting you with your move, surprise." My heart sank as I understood what was unfolding. Before I go further with this story, let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from. Press that like button and subscribe to discover how I managed this incredible situation. I need to provide you with some background about my life and family so you can grasp how startling this circumstance truly was. I've consistently been the dependable one in my family. After completing design school with top grades, I advanced my career at an architecture company in Boston. For 6 years, I resided in a cramped apartment, conserved every dollar, put in extra hours, and accepted freelance assignments on weekends. I brought my lunch, skipped holidays, and drove the same secondhand vehicle I purchased in college. All of this sacrifice served one goal: purchasing my dream home. 2 years back, that dream came true when I bought my 4-bedroom colonial with a gorgeous garden in a peaceful suburb. The house required renovations, but it had solid foundations, as we say in the profession. I dedicated weekends to painting, restoring hardwood floors, and doing yard work. This house symbolized everything I had worked toward: my independence, my achievements, my future. I intended to eventually transform one bedroom into a suitable home office, since my employer was transitioning toward remote work options. Another room served as my design studio, where I handled freelance assignments. The remaining spaces provided me room to expand and develop. My relationship with my parents has always been complex. Don't misunderstand me. They're not horrible people. They provided meals and kept a shelter over our heads growing up. But my brother Noah always took priority. He's 4 years my senior and could never do anything wrong in their view, even when he quit community college, failed to maintain employment for more than a few months, or required rescue money for different ventures that never succeeded. Meanwhile, my accomplishments were anticipated, not praised. "Of course you got straight A's, Madison. That's what you're expected to do," they would say before raving about Noah's C- because at least he passed this time. Noah married Samantha 3 years back. She's pleasant enough, though somewhat compliant, and ready to support whatever Noah desires. 5 months earlier, they revealed they were expecting their first child. The family was thrilled, particularly my parents, who had been pushing them for grandchildren. I was pleased for them as well, and even volunteered to assist with the nursery design since that's my professional specialty. Despite our disagreements, I've consistently been there for my family monetarily. When my parents' roof had a leak, I covered the repairs. When Noah's vehicle broke down, I handled the mechanic's fee. When Samantha required dental treatment, not covered by insurance, I provided the funds. I didn't object to helping. I was in a position to do so, and that's what family does. 3 weeks prior to this incident, we had a family meal at my parents' house. Noah brought up that they were searching for a larger place since their 1-bedroom apartment wouldn't work with a baby. I sympathized but didn't consider it further. There was no indication, not even the faintest hint, that my house was part of their housing plan. I departed for a business trip to Chicago the next week. I was presenting designs for a prospective new client, a deal that would result in a promotion if obtained. The meetings went remarkably well, and we concluded earlier than expected. Instead of remaining the scheduled 5 days, I was able to return home after just 3. I was eager to get back to my house, rest in my own bed, and have some peaceful time before returning to work. I had no clue that my early arrival would expose a betrayal so deep it would alter my relationship with my family permanently. As I drove into my driveway, I spotted my parents' sedan and my father's pickup truck parked outside. My initial thought was worry. Had something occurred? Was there an emergency? I hadn't informed them I was coming home early, so they couldn't have been there to greet me. That's when I detected the sound of activity inside my house and saw the pile of flattened, moving boxes resting against the garage. An uncomfortable sensation settled in my stomach as I grabbed my luggage and walked toward the front door. I had no clue I was entering a nightmare of entitlement and betrayal that would compel me to make one of the most difficult decisions of my life. I opened my front door and entered chaos. The foyer was crammed with boxes, some vacant, some already filled and sealed. I could hear my mother's voice from the kitchen discussing bubble wrap and delicate items. In the living room, my father was taking down the wall-mounted television, my framed diplomas already stacked on the floor close by. "Mom, Dad, what's happening?" I called out, dropping my luggage in astonishment. My mother emerged from the kitchen, a roll of packing tape in her hand and a surprised smile on her face. "Madison, you're back early. What a pleasant surprise." My father turned around, screwdriver in hand. "Hey, kiddo, we wanted to have more finished before you returned. Surprise kind of spoiled now." "What surprise? What are you doing to my house?" I asked, my voice escalating with each word. They exchanged glances before my mother approached me with what she obviously thought was good news. "We're helping you move, honey. We located the cutest studio apartment downtown, just 15 minutes from your office. You'll save so much on your commute." "Studio apartment? Moving? What are you discussing?" I looked around at my partially disassembled living room in disbelief. "Now, don't become upset," my father said, putting down his tools. "This is a win-win for everybody. You don't need all this space for just one person. For bedrooms for a single woman, it's excessive, really." My mother nodded enthusiastically. "And Noah and Samantha require the space with the baby coming. They've been searching everywhere, and nothing appropriate in their budget." Then we understood the solution was right in front of us. I stood there attempting to process their words. They were packing up my house that I had purchased with my money after years of saving, to give it to my brother and his wife. "Where is all my stuff going?" I managed to ask, noticing some of my decorative items were already gone. "We've been transporting loads over to the studio all day," my father said proudly. "It's coming together nicely. Small but comfortable. Perfect for a single person." I walked deeper into the house, examining the damage. My beautiful living room was halfway packed. The kitchen cabinets stood open, partially cleared. I rushed upstairs to find my bedroom mostly untouched, but my home office already boxed up. "You can't just decide I'm moving." I finally exploded. "This is my house. I bought it. I pay the mortgage." My mother appeared genuinely confused by my reaction. "Madison, don't be selfish. Your brother has a family to consider. They need this house more than you do." "We already told them they could move in next week," my father added casually. "They're giving notice at their apartment today." "You what?" I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "You told them they could have my house without even consulting me?" "We knew you would want to help your brother," my mother said, her tone suggesting I was being unreasonable. "You've always been so generous." I pushed past them and went to my office, only to discover most of my design materials and portfolio pieces already packed. Some of my most valuable architecture books were missing completely. Where are my reference books? The leather-bound collection that cost me $3,000. I demanded. "Oh, we transported those over yesterday," my mother said. "They're safely at the studio. Though, honestly, Madison, I don't understand why you need all those books. They're so heavy, and there's not much shelf space in the new place." That's when I noticed something even more alarming. My locked file cabinet was open, and several documents were missing. "Did you go through my private files?" I asked, my voice now dangerously quiet. My parents exchanged another look. "We needed some information," my father admitted, "for the lease application." Cold dread washed over me. "What lease application?" "For the studio," my mother explained slowly as if I were a child. "We had to act quickly to secure it. It's in a very desirable building." You signed a lease in my name? I was nearly shouting now. We're your emergency contacts, my father said defensively. We have all your information, and we know your signature. It's not like we're strangers. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. They had committed fraud. They had forged my signature on a legal document. How did you even get into my house when I wasn't here? I asked, suddenly realizing another violation. We have your spare key, remember? From when you had that plumbing issue last year, my mother reminded me. Just then, the front door opened and Noah and Samantha walked in, arms loaded with paint samples and fabric swatches. Hey, Madison, you're back early, Noah said, looking momentarily surprised before continuing into my living room as if he owned the place. We were just selecting colors for the nursery. What do you think of sage green? Samantha likes it, but I'm considering maybe a soft blue would be better. Samantha, her baby bump visible under her flowing top, smiled at me. Your house is perfect, Madison. We can't thank you enough. The nursery will be upstairs in the smallest bedroom, and we'll use your office as a playroom once the baby is a bit older. They were already planning renovations to my house that I had not consented to give them. I think there's been a misunderstanding, I said, attempting to keep my voice stable. I'm not moving out of my house. There was a moment of uncomfortable silence before my mother laughed anxiously. Madison is just a bit surprised, that's all. We wanted it to be further along before she returned. I'm not surprised, Mom. I'm furious, I corrected her. No one asked me if I wanted to move. No one asked if I wanted to give my house to Noah and Samantha. This is my house. Don't be ridiculous, my father scoffed. Family helps family. Your brother needs this house more than you do. You can easily live in a smaller place. It's not about what's easy or who needs what more, I said firmly. It's about the fact that this is my property that I worked hard for, and no one has the right to decide I should give it up. Noah looked at me with an expression of entitlement I recognized all too well from our childhood. Come on, Madison. Don't be dramatic. It's just a house. You can buy another one when you get married and have your own family someday. That's when I realized how little my family respected me, my achievements, or my property. They saw me as a resource to be used, not a person with rights and boundaries. And in that moment, I knew I had to take a stand or this pattern would never end. Everyone needs to stop what they're doing right now, I said, my voice shaking with anger. This is my house. I did not agree to move out. I did not agree to let Noah and Samantha live here, and I certainly did not authorize anyone to sign a lease in my name. My mother's face fell. Madison, be reasonable. The studio is already paid for. First month's rent and security deposit. We used your emergency fund information from that folder in your desk. You went through my financial documents. I was aghast. That's not just inappropriate, it's illegal. Don't throw around words like illegal, my father warned. We're your parents. We're looking out for your best interests. My best interests. I laughed bitterly. How is forcing me out of my home in my best interest? You're being selfish, my mother said, her voice hardening. Your brother has a baby on the way. They need stability. Then maybe Noah should have thought about stability before getting Samantha pregnant when they live in a one-bedroom apartment and he can't hold down a job for more than 3 months at a time. The words burst out before I could stop them. Noah's face darkened. Real nice, Madison. Always thinking you're better than everyone else because you've got a fancy job and a big house. I don't think I'm better than anyone, I countered. But I do think I deserve basic respect, which includes not having my house given away without my consent. Samantha, who had been quiet until now, suddenly burst into tears. I knew this was too good to be true, she sobbed. We're going to be stuck in that tiny apartment with a newborn because Madison won't help us. My mother immediately went to comfort her. Don't upset yourself, dear. Think of the baby. Madison will come around. She shot me a pointed look over Samantha's shoulder. I've helped you all plenty, I said, trying to stay calm. I paid for your roof repairs, Mom and Dad. I covered Noah's car repairs just 2 months ago. I paid for Samantha's dental work last year. But giving up my house is not happening. We wouldn't have had to do it this way if you weren't so attached to material things, my father said dismissively. We knew you'd make a fuss, which is why we thought it would be easier to present it as a done deal. A done deal? I repeated incredulously. You forged my signature on a lease. That's fraud. Don't be dramatic, Noah said. It's not like we're strangers stealing your identity. We're family. Family doesn't forge signatures, I countered. Family doesn't pack up someone's house without permission. My mother's expression hardened. I raised you better than this, Madison. Family takes care of family. Your brother needs help, and you're in a position to provide it. I've been helping for years, I said, but there's a difference between helping and being taken advantage of. We've already told everyone, Samantha interjected between sniffles. My parents are friends. Everyone knows we're moving into a house. I posted about it on social media yesterday. You did what? I stared at her in disbelief. It was supposed to be a surprise for you too, Noah said, as if that made it better. We were going to help with your moving costs as a thank you. Oh, how generous of you to help with costs for a move I never agreed to, I said sarcastically. My father stepped closer, his expression stern. Madison, enough. This is happening. The studio lease is signed. Noah and Samantha need this house. You're going to do the right thing and help your family. The right thing, I repeated. The right thing would have been to ask me first. The right thing would have been to respect my property and my choices. You would have said no, my mother pointed out, as if that justified their actions. Yes, I probably would have, because this is my home, and that would have been my right. Well, it's too late now, Noah said smugly. The lease is signed. We've given notice at our apartment, and honestly, Madison, we're doing you a favor. That commute of yours is ridiculous. The studio is much closer to your office. I took a deep breath, trying to think clearly through my anger. Show me this lease you supposedly signed for me. My mother reluctantly went to her purse and pulled out a folded document. I scanned it quickly, seeing my forged signature at the bottom. The studio was indeed downtown, but it was half the size of my current master bedroom and cost nearly as much as my mortgage payment. This is insane, I said, looking up from the paper. You expect me to give up my 4-bedroom house for this overpriced closet? It's more than enough space for one person, my father insisted. You're hardly ever home anyway with your work schedule. That's not the point, I was nearly shouting now. The point is that you had no right to make this decision for me. We're your parents, my mother said, as if that explained everything. We know what's best. I'm 28 years old. I make my own decisions about where I live. Noah scoffed. Always so independent. Would it kill you to think about someone else for once? Samantha's pregnant. We need space for the baby. Then maybe you should have secured appropriate housing before deciding to have a child. I shot back. Samantha burst into fresh tears. See how cruel she's being? Stress isn't good for the baby. My mother glared at me. Now look what you've done. I felt like I was losing my mind. They had invaded my home, packed up my belongings, forged my signature on a lease, and somehow I was the villain in this scenario. I want everyone out of my house right now, I said quietly. Madison. My father's voice took on a warning tone. Think very carefully about what you're doing. This is family. Yes, and family should respect boundaries. Family shouldn't commit fraud. Family shouldn't steal. Steal? My mother looked offended. We're not stealing anything. You're trying to take my house, I pointed out. You've already taken some of my belongings to this studio I never agreed to rent. Those are just things, Madison, my father said dismissively. What's more important, your stuff or your family? And there it was. The manipulation tactic they'd used on me my entire life. Family above all else, even when family meant sacrificing everything while others gave nothing. "If you don't do this," my mother said, her voice deadly serious, "you're choosing objects over people who love you. Is that really the person you want to be?" Noah nodded along. "Yes, sis. Is your precious house worth losing your family over?" I looked around at their faces, my parents' self-righteous certainty, Noah's entitled expectation, Samantha's calculated tears, and suddenly saw with perfect clarity what was happening. This wasn't love. This wasn't family looking out for each other. This was exploitation dressed up as familial obligation. "Get out," I said again, my voice stronger this time. "All of you, get out of my house right now." Madison Elizabeth Bailey. My father used my full name, something he hadn't done since I was a teenager. "If you do this, if you refuse to help your brother in his time of need, don't expect to remain part of this family." It was the ultimate threat, the nuclear option they thought would make me fall in line as it had so many times before. But something had broken inside me. Some lifetime of compliance snapped by this final outrageous demand. "That's your choice," I said quietly. "But this is my house, and I'm not giving it up now. Please leave before this gets worse." After my ultimatum, the room fell silent. My mother was the first to speak, her voice trembling with what sounded like genuine shock. "You would really choose a house over your own family, over your own flesh and blood?" "This isn't about the house," I tried to explain. "This is about respect, about boundaries, about the fact that you all made huge decisions about my life without even consulting me." "We knew you'd be difficult," my father said. "You've always been stubborn, even as a child." Noah stepped forward, his face flushed with anger. "So that's it. You're going to make my pregnant wife and unborn child live in a cramped apartment while you rattle around in this big house all by yourself. Real nice, Madison. Real sisterly of you." I took a deep breath. "Noah, I'm sorry your housing situation isn't ideal, but that doesn't make it my responsibility to give you my home." "I always knew you were selfish," he spat. Always looking out for number one, never thinking about anyone else. The irony of Noah, who had spent his entire life being bailed out by others, calling me selfish, was almost laughable. Almost. "I've helped you countless times," I reminded him. "I've given you money, paid for repairs, covered your expenses when you were between jobs, which seems to be most of the time." His face darkened. "Oh, here we go. Saint Madison, so generous, always keeping score. You think you're so much better than me because you have a steady job and a fancy degree." "This isn't about who's better," I said tiredly. "This is about the fact that you all decided I should give up my home without even asking me." Samantha, still sniffling, looked up from the tissue my mother had given her. "We were going to make some beautiful changes to this place," she said. "Refinish the hardwood floors, paint the nursery, maybe knock out that wall between the kitchen and dining room for an open concept look." I stared at her in disbelief. "You were planning renovations to my house?" Noah nodded enthusiastically, seemingly forgetting our argument for a moment. "We have all these ideas. The backyard would be perfect for a playground once the baby's a little older. And I was thinking of converting your studio into a man cave." My design studio, the space where I did freelance work that supplemented my income. The room with perfect natural light that I'd carefully arranged with my drafting table and materials. They wanted to turn it into a man cave. "This is unbelievable," I said, more to myself than to them. My father checked his watch. "We're wasting time arguing. There's still a lot to pack if we want to get you moved by the weekend." "I'm not moving," I nearly shouted. "How many times do I have to say it? This is my house. I'm staying here." My mother's expression hardened. "Madison, you need to think very carefully about what you're doing right now. Family is forever. Are you really willing to destroy your relationship with all of us over a house?" "You're the ones destroying our relationship," I pointed out. "You're the ones who invaded my home, packed up my belongings without permission, and tried to force me out. "We're trying to help you," my mother insisted. "That commute of yours is terrible. The studio is much closer to your office. If you were trying to help me, you would have asked what I wanted." My father stepped forward, his expression serious. "Madison, I'm only going to say this once. Either you accept this arrangement and help your brother and his growing family, or you can consider yourself cut off." "Cut off?" I repeated. "From this family," he clarified. "No more Sunday dinners, no contact with your niece or nephew, no more holidays together. Is that what you want?" I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. They were threatening to disown me because I wouldn't give up my house. My mind flashed to all the times in my life when I'd been made to feel that my needs, my feelings, my very existence was secondary to my brother's. When I was 10, my parents used my college fund to bail out Noah after he totaled his first car. "We'll build it back up," they promised. They never did. When I was 16 and won a prestigious art contest, my parents missed the award ceremony because Noah had a minor fender bender the same day. Not an emergency, just a scratch bumper, but they needed to be there for him. When I graduated with honors, they attended the ceremony but left immediately after because Noah had a job interview the next day in another state. They drove all night to help him prepare. He didn't get the job. Every memory, every slight, every time I'd been made to feel less important crashed over me like a wave. And now here they were, trying to take the one thing I had worked hardest for, my home, my sanctuary, the physical manifestation of my independence and success. "I need a minute," I said, my voice breaking. I turned and walked to my bathroom, locking the door behind me. I splashed cold water on my face and stared at my reflection in the mirror. My eyes were red-rimmed, my face blotchy from crying. I barely recognized myself. "Who are these people?" I whispered to my reflection. "And why have I let them treat me this way for so long?" The realization hit me with stunning clarity. This pattern would never end unless I ended it. My family had spent my entire life taking advantage of my generosity, my desire to please, my need for their approval. They had conditioned me to believe that my role was to sacrifice, to give, to make myself smaller so that Noah could be bigger. And now they wanted my house, the culmination of all my hard work, the reward for all my sacrifices. They wanted to take it from me and give it to my brother, who had done nothing to earn it. They wanted me to live in a tiny studio so that Noah could have more space he hadn't worked for. It was never going to stop. There would always be another need, another demand, another sacrifice I was expected to make, unless I put my foot down now. I took a deep breath, dried my eyes, and made the hardest decision of my life. I pulled out my phone and dialed 911. "What's your emergency?" the dispatcher asked. "I need to report people in my home who are refusing to leave," I said quietly. "They've taken my belongings without permission and forged my signature on documents. I need help." After giving my address and hanging up, I leaned against the bathroom wall, feeling sick but also strangely relieved. For the first time in my life, I was standing up for myself. For the first time, I was saying no to being exploited by the people who should have protected me. I unlocked the bathroom door and walked back to my family, who were still discussing renovation plans as if my objections meant nothing. "The police are on their way," I announced calmly. All conversation stopped, for faces turned to me in shock. "You called the police," my mother gasped, "on your own family?" "Yes," I said simply. "I asked you all to leave my home. You refused. I have no choice. You're having us arrested." Noah looked genuinely stunned. "I'm having you removed from my property," I corrected him. "And I'm reporting the forgery of my signature, which is a crime. You would do this to us?" My father's face was turning an alarming shade of red. "After everything we've done for you?" I almost laughed. "What exactly have you done for me, Dad? When have you ever put my needs first? When have you ever supported my choices or respected my boundaries?" "We raised you," he shouted. Yes, you did the bare minimum required by law, I acknowledged. And I've spent my adult life trying to repay that by helping all of you financially whenever you needed it. But this, taking my house, is a step too far. I can't believe you're doing this, Samantha said, her hand protectively over her belly. What kind of person calls the police on their own family? The kind who's finally realized that family isn't supposed to exploit you, I answered honestly. As if on cue, there was a knock at the door. 2 police officers stood on my porch, looking professional and slightly concerned. We received a call about unwanted individuals in a residence, the female officer said. And in that moment, as I prepared to explain the situation to the authorities, I knew my life would never be the same. But I also knew with absolute certainty that I was finally doing the right thing. Not for my brother, not for my parents, but for myself. I'm Madison Bailey, I told the officers, my voice steadier than I expected. I'm the homeowner. I called because these people are in my home without permission and refusing to leave when asked. The female officer nodded. I'm Officer Henderson, and this is Officer Rivera. Can you explain the situation? My father stepped forward immediately. There's been a misunderstanding. We're her parents. He gestured to my mother. And this is her brother and sister-in-law. This is a family matter. Officer Henderson looked at me. Is that correct? These are family members. Yes, I confirmed, but they're here without my permission. I returned home from a business trip to find them packing up my belongings. They've already removed some of my property without consent and taken it to another location. They also forged my signature on a lease agreement. That's ridiculous, my mother interjected. We're helping her move. She's being unreasonable. I never agreed to move, I stated firmly. This is my house. I own it. I pay the mortgage. I did not consent to anyone packing my belongings or making arrangements for me to live elsewhere. Officer Rivera was taking notes. Do you have proof of ownership? Yes, I said, grateful that I kept important documents in a fire safe in my bedroom closet. One place they hadn't managed to pack up yet. I can show you the deed and mortgage statements. She's having a tantrum, my father told the officers dismissively. We're her parents. We know what's best for her. Sir, Officer Henderson said calmly but firmly, if Miss Bailey is the legal owner of this property and has asked you to leave, you need to comply with that request. This is absurd, Noah cut in. We're family. You can't just call the cops on family. Family or not, Officer Rivera explained. If the property owner asks you to leave and you refuse, you're trespassing. I went upstairs to retrieve my documentation, hand shaking but resolve firm. When I returned, I showed the officers my deed, mortgage statements, and identification, proving I was indeed Madison Bailey, legal owner of the property. Can I also show you this? I handed them the lease agreement with my forged signature. They signed this without my knowledge or consent using my personal information. Officer Henderson examined the document carefully. Did you authorize anyone to sign this on your behalf? Absolutely not, I said firmly. My mother stepped forward, her voice trembling. We're her emergency contacts. We were just trying to help. Being an emergency contact doesn't give you legal authority to sign contracts on someone's behalf, Officer Rivera explained. That would require power of attorney or other legal documentation. We're her parents, my father repeated, as if that explained everything. Sir, adult children are not the property of their parents, Officer Henderson said patiently. Miss Bailey has the right to make her own decisions about where she lives. So what happens now? Noah demanded. Now you all need to leave the premises, as Miss Bailey has requested. Officer Rivera stated, as for the unauthorized signing of the lease and removal of property, Miss Bailey can choose whether to pursue those matters legally. My mother began to cry. I can't believe you're doing this to us, Madison, after everything we've done for you. What about the things you've already taken to that studio? I asked, ignoring her tears. You'll need to return all property to Miss Bailey, Officer Henderson advised my parents. If you don't, she can file charges for theft. Theft? My father exploded. We're not thieves. We're family. Taking someone's property without permission is theft, regardless of your relationship to them, Officer Rivera explained calmly. Samantha had been quiet, but now she spoke up, her voice small. What about the lease? We've already given notice at our apartment. That's not Madison's problem, Officer Henderson said firmly. The lease signed in her name was done so fraudulently. She's not obligated to honor it. My family looked stunned, as if they genuinely couldn't believe this wasn't going their way. Had they really expected the police to side with them, to force me to give up my house because family? I need all of you to leave now, I said, feeling a strange calm come over me. You can make arrangements to return the property you've already taken, but right now I want you out of my house. Madison, my mother pleaded, don't do this. Think about what you're doing. I have thought about it, I said quietly. I've thought about how you've always treated me as less important than Noah. I've thought about how you've taken advantage of my generosity. And I've thought about how you tried to take my house without even asking me. I'm done. Under the watchful eyes of the officers, my family gathered their personal belongings, purses, jackets, the paint samples they'd brought for their planned renovations. This isn't over, my father warned as they headed for the door. Actually, it is, I replied. And if you try something like this again, I won't hesitate to press charges. After they left, Officer Henderson turned to me with a sympathetic expression. Are you going to be okay? Do you have someone who can stay with you tonight? I thought about it and realized there was someone I could call, my childhood friend, Tara, who had recently moved back to town after finishing law school. We'd reconnected a few months ago, and she was one of the few people who understood my family dynamics. I have someone, I assured the officer, and I'm going to have my locks changed today. That's a good idea, Officer Rivera nodded. And you might want to consider speaking with an attorney about a restraining order, especially if they made threats or you think they might try to enter your home again. After the officers left, I sat in my partially dismantled living room and called Tara. She arrived 30 minutes later with dinner and a bottle of wine. I can't believe they did this, she said after I'd explained everything. Actually, no, I can believe it. Remember when they borrowed your prom dress deposit for Noah's spring break trip? I nodded, the memory still painful 20 years later. They've always been like this. I just never thought they'd go this far. Well, I'm proud of you for standing up to them, Tara said firmly. And as your friend who happens to be a lawyer, I strongly recommend we document everything and file for that restraining order. With Tara's help, I called a locksmith who came that evening to change all the locks. I also arranged for a security company to install cameras around the property the next day. If my family tried anything else, I wanted evidence. As Tara and I sat on my couch that night, surrounded by half-packed boxes that I would need to unpack, I felt a strange mix of grief and liberation. I had lost my family today, or rather, I had finally recognized what had been true all along. They didn't respect me as an individual with rights and boundaries. But in standing up for myself, I had gained something precious, self-respect. For the first time in my life, I had refused to be the family doormat. I had said no to being exploited. And despite the pain, despite the uncertain future of my family relationships, I knew I had made the right choice. To boundaries, Tara said, raising her wine glass in a toast. To boundaries, I echoed, clinking my glass against hers. And to new beginnings. The fallout from my confrontation with my family was swift and extensive. By the following morning, my phone was flooded with text messages and voicemails, not just from my parents and Noah, but from aunts, uncles, cousins, and family friends. It seemed my parents had wasted no time in sharing their version of events. How could you call the police on your own parents? Your brother has a baby on the way. Have you no heart? After everything your family has done for you, this is how you repay them. The messages varied in tone but shared a common theme. I was selfish, ungrateful, and cruel for not giving up my home to my brother and his pregnant wife. "They're really spinning this," Tara observed as I showed her some of the messages over coffee the next morning. She had stayed the night on my couch, unwilling to leave me alone after the confrontation. "They're not telling anyone that they forged my signature or packed up my house without permission," I pointed out. "According to them, I'm the villain for not wanting to be homeless." "Classic manipulation," Tara nodded. "Make you the bad guy so no one questions their behavior." I had taken the day off work, needing time to process everything and start putting my house back in order. The security company arrived mid-morning to install cameras, and I spent several hours unpacking the boxes my family had already filled. Around noon, my phone rang with my boss's number. I answered, expecting questions about my Chicago presentation. "Madison." Sarah's voice sounded concerned. "Is everything okay? Your mother called the office this morning, very upset about some family emergency." My stomach dropped. "My mother called my workplace?" "Yes. She said she needed to reach you urgently about a family crisis. She mentioned something about your brother being in trouble." I closed my eyes, trying to control my anger. "Sarah, I'm so sorry she bothered you. There's no emergency. My family and I are having a disagreement, but it's nothing that affects my work." After reassuring my boss that everything was under control, I hung up, seething. They were now trying to interfere with my professional life. "We need to accelerate that restraining order," Tara said when I told her about the call. "This is harassment." That afternoon, we went to the courthouse to file for a temporary restraining order. With Tara's legal expertise guiding me, I presented evidence of my family's actions. Photographs of my partially packed house, the fraudulently signed lease, statements from the police officers who had responded to my call. "The judge granted the temporary order," Tara explained as we left the courthouse. "Your parents, brother, and sister-in-law can't come within 100 feet of your home or workplace for the next 30 days. There will be a hearing in 2 weeks to determine if it should be extended." I felt relief mixed with sadness. I never imagined I would need legal protection for my own family. When we returned to my house, a moving truck was parked outside. My father's pickup was next to it. "They're violating the order already," I said in disbelief. "They probably haven't been served yet," Tara explained, pulling out her phone. "I'll call the sheriff's office." As we watched from my car, my father and 2 men I didn't recognize carried boxes from the truck to the front porch. My mother supervised, pointing and directing. "They're returning your things," Tara realized. We waited in the car until they had finished unloading and driven away before approaching the house. The porch was stacked high with boxes, my belongings from the studio apartment I had never agreed to rent. A handwritten note was taped to one of them. I picked up the note and read it aloud to Tara. "Madison, we're returning your property as requested. We hope you'll reconsider your position once you've had time to calm down and think rationally. Family is forever, and we know you'll do the right thing in the end. Love, Mom and Dad." "Think rationally," Tara repeated with disgust. "They still don't get it. They still think they're the reasonable ones here." "They never will," I said quietly, folding the note and putting it in my pocket. "They'll never understand that what they did was wrong." Over the next few days, I worked on restoring my house to its previous state. Every box unpacked, every item returned to its proper place felt like a small victory. Tara helped when she could, and I hired professional movers to assist with the heavier furniture that had been shifted around. The restraining order hearing came 2 weeks later. My parents, Noah, and Samantha sat on one side of the courtroom with their attorney, a family friend who had agreed to represent them. I sat on the other side with Tara. Their attorney painted me as an ungrateful daughter who had overreacted to what he called well-intentioned family assistance. He argued that my parents were only trying to help me live closer to work while providing necessary housing for their pregnant daughter-in-law. When it was my turn to present my case, Tara methodically laid out the evidence: the forged signature, the unauthorized entry into my home, the removal of my property without consent, the harassment at my workplace, and the numerous threatening messages I had received from extended family members. "Your Honor," Tara concluded, "this isn't about family helping family. This is about adults who refuse to respect boundaries, committed fraud, and continue to harass Miss Bailey despite clear requests to stop." The judge reviewed all the documentation carefully before making his decision. "I'm extending the restraining order for 1 year," he announced. "The respondents are to have no contact with Miss Bailey, directly or indirectly. They are not to come within 100 feet of her residence or place of employment. Any violation will result in immediate arrest." My mother gasped audibly. My father's face turned red with anger. Noah simply stared at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. Shock, perhaps, or disbelief that his younger sister had actually won. As we left the courthouse, Tara squeezed my hand. "You did it. You stood up for yourself and won." "It doesn't feel like winning," I admitted, watching my family exit through a different door, refusing to even look in my direction. "That's because you're a good person," Tara said gently. "But sometimes being a good person means setting boundaries, even when it hurts." "From the studio," Tara confirmed. We waited in the car until they finished unloading. As they were preparing to leave, a sheriff's deputy pulled up. We watched as he approached my parents and served them with the restraining order papers. Even from a distance, I could see my father's face turn red with anger. My mother covered her face with her hands. After a heated exchange with the deputy, they finally got in their vehicles and drove away. "Are you okay?" Tara asked gently. I wasn't sure how to answer. "I guess this is really happening. I'm legally separating myself from my family." The next few days were a blur of activity. I returned to work, trying to focus on the Chicago project despite the emotional turmoil. My colleagues noticed something was wrong, but I kept the details vague, embarrassed to explain that my family had tried to steal my house. My phone continued to explode with messages from extended family and mutual friends. Some were angry and accusatory, clearly having heard only my parents' side of the story. Others were confused and concerned, wanting to know what had really happened. I decided to send a brief, factual explanation to a few key people whose opinions I valued: my godmother, who had always been kind to me, a cousin I was close with, a family friend who had been my mentor in college. I came home to find my parents packing up my house without my permission. They had signed a lease in my name for a studio apartment and told Noah and Samantha they could move into my house. When I objected, they threatened to disown me. I asked them to leave. They refused, so I called the police. I've now filed a restraining order because they're continuing to harass me. The responses were mixed. My godmother was horrified on my behalf. My cousin was sympathetic, but urged me to find a compromise for the sake of family peace. My mentor was firmly in my corner. Boundaries are healthy. Stick to yours. By the end of the week, the emotional toll was evident. I was exhausted, struggling to sleep, jumping at every noise outside my house. Despite the security cameras and new locks, I felt vulnerable. The people I had trusted most in the world had betrayed me in such a fundamental way that I questioned everything. Tara suggested I see a therapist, and I made an appointment with someone she recommended. Dr. Patricia Lynn specialized in family dynamics and boundary issues. Our first session was enlightening. "What you're describing sounds like a lifetime of emotional manipulation," Dr. Lynn observed after I'd explained my family history. "Your parents have conditioned you to believe that your brother's needs always come before yours. This house incident was just the breaking point. But am I overreacting?" I asked, voicing the doubt that had been gnawing at me. "It's just a house. Maybe I should have found a way to help them." "Madison," Dr. Lynn said gently, "imagine if these weren't your parents and brother. Imagine a friend told you that someone had entered their home while they were away, packed up their belongings without permission, forged their signature on a lease, and tried to force them out of their own property. Would you think your friend was overreacting by calling the police? Put that way, the answer was obvious. No, I'd tell them to press charges. Exactly. We often accept behavior from family that we would never tolerate from others. But being related to someone doesn't give them the right to violate your boundaries or take your property. Over the next few weeks, I settled into a new routine. I went to work, continued therapy, spent time with Tara and a small circle of supportive friends, and slowly restored my house to its former state. The hearing for the permanent restraining order arrived. My parents and Noah showed up with a lawyer of their own, looking solemn and injured. They didn't speak to me directly, respecting the temporary order, but I could feel their eyes on me throughout the proceedings. Their lawyer tried to paint the situation as a family misunderstanding. These are loving parents who were trying to help both their children, he argued. They may have overstepped, but their intentions were good. Tara, who had agreed to represent me, was having none of it. Intentions don't matter when actions are illegal, she countered. The respondents entered Miss Bailey's home without permission, removed her property without consent, and committed forgery by signing a legal document in her name. They then harassed her at her workplace when she objected to these violations. The judge, a no-nonsense woman in her 60s, seemed unimpressed by my family's defense. Good intentions don't excuse breaking the law, she noted, echoing Tara's point. And adults, even parents, don't have the right to make housing decisions for their adult children. She granted a 6-month restraining order with the possibility of extension if necessary. My family left the courtroom without looking at me, my mother leaning heavily on my father's arm as if physically wounded by the decision. As painful as the estrangement was, I found myself breathing easier in the weeks that followed. Without the constant stress of managing my family's expectations and demands, I flourished at work. The Chicago project was a success, leading to a promotion and more responsibility at the firm. I learned from mutual friends that Noah and Samantha had found a 2-bedroom apartment that was within their budget. It wasn't the spacious house they'd tried to take from me, but it was perfectly adequate for a small family. Noah had even managed to hold on to a job for more than 3 months, perhaps finally motivated by impending fatherhood. My parents, I heard, were telling anyone who would listen that I had broken their hearts and abandoned the family. Some believed them. Others, who had witnessed their behavior over the years, were more skeptical. I missed them sometimes, or rather, I missed the idea of family, the dream of having parents who supported and respected me. But I didn't miss the reality of our relationship, the constant expectation that I would sacrifice my needs for others, particularly for Noah. As the months passed, I reclaimed not just my house, but myself. For the first time in my life, I wasn't defined by my role as the responsible one, the giver, the fixer in my family. I was just Madison, architect, homeowner, friend, woman finding her own path. And despite the pain of estrangement, despite the judgment from those who didn't understand, I knew I had made the right choice. Some prices are too high, even for family. My house, my sanctuary, my achievement, my home was worth fighting for. But more importantly, my dignity and self-respect were worth even more. 6 months after the confrontation that changed everything, I stood in my kitchen preparing dinner for friends. The house looked better than ever. I'd finished some renovation projects I'd been planning before the incident, including updating the kitchen with new countertops and a stunning backsplash that I designed myself. My home office was now a productive space where I worked on freelance projects that had become increasingly lucrative. My promotion at work had come with more flexibility to work remotely, making my home office even more valuable than before. The irony wasn't lost on me. My parents had claimed I didn't need this much space, yet every room now served a purpose in my thriving life and career. The spare bedroom I'd converted into a guest room had hosted Tara multiple times, and other friends who visited from out of town. The studio space continued to be the creative heart of my freelance work, bringing an additional income that allowed me to build my savings back up after the legal expenses. The restraining order had expired, but my boundaries remained firm. After several months of no contact, my mother had sent a card on my birthday. It wasn't exactly an apology. "We miss you and hope you'll reconsider your position on family," but it was the first acknowledgement that I had a position worth considering. I responded with a brief note: "I'm open to rebuilding our relationship, but only with clear boundaries and mutual respect." I included my therapist's suggestion that we consider family counseling if they wanted to move forward. The response came 2 weeks later, not from my mother, but from Noah. It was a text message that arrived late one evening as I was reviewing plans for a new project. "Madison, Samantha had the baby. A girl. We named her Emma. She's healthy and beautiful. I know things have been messed up between us, but I thought you should know you're an aunt." I stared at the message for a long time, emotions swirling. Joy that the baby had arrived safely. Sadness that I hadn't been part of the pregnancy journey. Anger that they thought a simple announcement would fix everything. But also, surprisingly, a tiny flicker of hope. I showed the message to Dr. Lynn at my next therapy session. "How do you feel about it?" she asked. "Conflicted," I admitted. "Part of me wants to reach out to meet my niece, but another part of me is terrified that if I give an inch, they'll take everything again." "Those are both valid feelings," Dr. Lynn said. "The question is, can you maintain your boundaries while also being open to limited contact?" We spent the session discussing what healthy boundaries might look like, what I was willing to offer, and what I absolutely would not compromise on. By the end, I had a plan. I sent Noah a response. "Congratulations on Emma's arrival. I'm happy she's healthy. I'd be open to meeting her. But I need to be clear about my boundaries. Our relationship moving forward will require respect for my autonomy and property. If you and Samantha are willing to discuss this, perhaps we could meet in a neutral location." His response came quickly. "We can do that. How about coffee next weekend? Just you and me to start." The coffee shop was neutral territory, a small place halfway between my house and their apartment. I arrived early, ordering a latte and sitting at a corner table where I could see the door. My palms were sweaty, and I kept checking my phone, half expecting him to cancel. But Noah walked in right on time, looking tired but more mature somehow. Fatherhood, even in its early days, had left its mark. Dark circles under his eyes, a slight slouch in his shoulders, but also something softer in his expression. "Thanks for meeting me," he said, sitting down across from me. "Thanks for reaching out," I replied carefully. We sat in awkward silence for a moment before Noah spoke again. "I've been doing a lot of thinking these past months. About what happened, about how we treated you." I waited, not wanting to interrupt. "I was wrong," he said, finally meeting my eyes. "We were all wrong. What we did, trying to take your house, forging your signature, all of it, it was completely out of line." I felt tears prick my eyes but blinked them back. "Do Mom and Dad feel the same way?" Noah hesitated. "They're coming around. It's been hard for them to admit they were wrong. You know how they are. But losing you, not having you in our lives, it's made them realize some things." "Like what?" I pressed. "Like how much they've always expected you to sacrifice for me," he said quietly. "Like how they've taken your generosity for granted. Dad actually said the other day that he never realized how much you'd done for us over the years until you weren't there anymore." It was the closest thing to an acknowledgement I'd ever received from my family. "I'm not the same person I was 6 months ago, Noah," I said firmly. "I'm not going back to being the family ATM or the one who's expected to give up everything for everyone else." "I know," he said, "and I don't expect you to. I want my daughter to know her aunt. And I want to rebuild our relationship if you're willing, but on your terms this time." 2 weeks later, I received a call from my father. The conversation was stiff and uncomfortable, but he didn't mention the house incident directly. Instead, he talked about the weather, asked about my job, and awkwardly invited me to dinner to talk. After consulting with Dr. Lynn, I agreed to meet them, not at their house or mine, but on neutral ground at a restaurant. Tara offered to be on standby just in case. The dinner was tense but civil. My parents looked older somehow, as if the months of estrangement had aged them. My mother did most of the talking, sharing news about relatives and mutual friends. My father mainly pushed food around his plate and occasionally grunted in agreement. Finally, as dessert arrived, my mother broached the subject we'd been avoiding. "We've been doing some thinking," she said cautiously. "Maybe we didn't handle things the best way with your house." It wasn't the full apology I deserved, but coming from my mother, it was significant. "No, you didn't," I agreed, not making it easier for them, but not escalating either. "We just wanted what was best for everyone," my father added. "What you thought was best," I corrected gently. "But you didn't ask me what I thought was best for my own life." They exchanged glances. "We're your parents," my mother said, but the phrase lacked the entitled certainty it had carried before. "Yes, you are," I acknowledged, "and I'll always be your daughter. But I'm also an adult with the right to make my own decisions, especially about where I live and what I do with my property." My father nodded slowly. "Your brother found a place," he offered, as if this somehow resolved everything. "I heard," I said. "I'm glad it worked out." The conversation wasn't everything I had hoped for. There was no moment of profound realization on their part, no tearful apology or promise to respect my boundaries going forward. But it was a start, an acknowledgement that something had been broken and needed repair. We agreed to take things slowly. I wasn't ready to attend family gatherings where Noah would be present, but I agreed to occasional dinners with just my parents. They, in turn, promised not to pressure me about reconciling with my brother or attending family events I wasn't comfortable with. I learned that Samantha had given birth to a healthy baby boy 2 months earlier. They named him Lucas. I sent a gift, a thoughtful collection of baby books and a handmade quilt I'd commissioned from a local artisan, but declined the invitation to meet my nephew. That wound was still too raw, the memory of Samantha's manipulative tears and sense of entitlement too fresh. The thought of walking into their apartment, seeing them settled in their lives while pretending nothing had happened, felt like more than I could handle. "Give yourself time," Dr. Lynn advised during our now monthly sessions. "Healing family relationships isn't linear. There will be progress and setbacks. The important thing is that you're maintaining your boundaries." And I was. For the first time in my life, I wasn't sacrificing my needs to keep the peace or make others comfortable. I was prioritizing my own well-being, and the results were transformative. My career flourished as I poured energy, previously spent managing family drama, into creative projects. I developed a reputation at the firm for innovative solutions and meticulous attention to detail. The promotion I'd received after the Chicago project was just the beginning. Within 6 months, I was leading my own team on major accounts, mentoring junior architects, and presenting at industry conferences. My home, once a source of conflict, became a true sanctuary. I hosted dinner parties for friends, joined a book club that met in my living room once a month, and converted one of the spare bedrooms into a yoga and meditation space. I took up painting again, something I'd loved in college but had abandoned during my years of intense work and family obligations. My studio became a creative haven where I explored watercolors and acrylics on weekend mornings. Every corner of the house reflected my personality and priorities, not because I needed to fill the space, but because I deserved to create an environment that nurtured my spirit. The garden I'd started that spring became a therapeutic project. I spent weekend mornings planting herbs, vegetables, and flowers, finding peace in the simple act of cultivating life. Most importantly, I developed deeper, healthier relationships with friends who respected my boundaries and valued me for who I was, not what I could give them. Tara remained my closest confidant, but I also reconnected with college friends and made new connections through work and community activities. I joined a women's professional networking group and volunteered with a local organization that helped young women pursue careers in architecture and design. "You seem different," observed Claire, a colleague who had become a friend, during one of my dinner parties. "More confident somehow, like you're fully yourself." I smiled, realizing she was right. I am. I've learned that it's okay to stand up for myself, even when it's difficult, especially when it's difficult. On the 1-year anniversary of the confrontation, I took the day off work and went hiking in a nearby state park. As I stood on an overlook watching the sunset paint the sky in brilliant oranges and pinks, I reflected on how far I'd come. The pain of that day hadn't disappeared entirely. I still felt a pang when I thought about how easily my family had been willing to discard my needs and violate my boundaries. But the acute anguish had faded, replaced by a quiet strength and self-assurance I hadn't known I was capable of possessing. I had learned that family isn't just about blood ties. It's about mutual respect, support, and love that doesn't come with conditions or demands for sacrifice. The people who had stood by me during the past year, Tara, my supportive colleagues, my therapist, the friends who brought dinner and wine when I was at my lowest, they were family too, in all the ways that mattered. My relationship with my parents was slowly improving, though it would never be the same. They were making efforts to respect my boundaries, though they occasionally slipped into old patterns of expectation and manipulation. When they did, I gently but firmly reminded them of my limits. Sometimes they listened. Sometimes we had to take a step back from each other for a while. But we were learning to navigate a new kind of relationship, one built on honesty rather than obligation. Noah remained distant, still bitter about what he perceived as my selfishness. I'd heard through mutual friends that he told people I'd abandoned the family in their time of need. It hurt, but I had made peace with that separation. Some relationships, I realized, are too damaged to repair. And that's okay. I couldn't force him to understand my perspective or acknowledge the harm he'd caused. As I drove home from the hike, I felt a sense of closure. The house that had become a battleground was now unquestionably mine, not just legally, but emotionally. I had fought for it and won. But more importantly, I had fought for myself. That evening, I sat on my back porch with a glass of wine, watching fireflies dance in the garden I had planted that spring. My phone buzzed with a text from Tara. "Thinking of you today. Proud of how far you've come." I smiled and typed back, "Thanks for being there when it mattered most. Having dinner with the parents tomorrow. Wish me luck." Her response came quickly. "You don't need luck. You've got boundaries and a backbone of steel. You've got this." And I did. The journey hadn't been easy, and it wasn't over. There would be more challenges, more moments when I'd need to stand firm in the face of pressure or guilt. Family dynamics don't change overnight, and old patterns have deep roots. But I had found my voice and my strength. I had learned that saying no to exploitation isn't selfish. It's necessary for self-preservation and healthy relationships. My house remained my sanctuary, my achievement, my home. The 4 bedrooms that my parents had called excessive now served as testament to my independence. My bedroom, my home office where I thrived professionally, my art studio where I rediscovered creativity, and a guest room for the chosen family who respected and supported me. But the most valuable thing I had gained wasn't the property I'd fought for. It was the knowledge that I was worth fighting for. My needs mattered. My boundaries deserved respect. And I had the courage to ensure they received it, even when that meant standing alone against the people who were supposed to love me unconditionally. I hope my story resonates with anyone who has struggled with family boundaries or felt pressured to sacrifice their own well-being for others. The cultural narrative that family comes first can be deeply harmful when it means accepting abuse, manipulation, or exploitation. Real love respects boundaries. Real family supports your growth, not your submission. Have you ever had to stand up to family pressure? What helped you stay strong? Share your experiences in the comments below. And if this story meant something to you, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might need to hear it. Remember, setting boundaries isn't selfish. It's essential for your mental health and happiness. You are not responsible for managing other people's emotions or solving their problems at the expense of your own well-being. You deserve respect, autonomy, and a life that reflects your own choices and values. Thank you for listening to my journey. To anyone facing similar challenges, you are not alone. You are not wrong for wanting to be treated with respect, and you are strong enough to stand up for yourself. Your life, your home, your future, they belong to you. Don't let anyone take that away. Stay strong, set those boundaries, and remember, you are worth fighting for.